Agent Romanov. You miss me?
Oh yeah, Charles, we got ourselves an X-Men fan.
Captain.
Your Highness.
Captain, big fan, Spider-Man. Hey everyone.
Hey guys, and welcome to 𝗪𝗁𝗁𝗃𝗀𝗀, your number one source for all things films and movies. And when it came to Loki, the television series on Disney+, a lot of fans really loved it. And interestingly enough, though, it seems like some big mysteries surrounding scenes that didn't quite make it into the movie have kind of been somewhat resolved with the new documentary episode of Assembled, also on Disney+, that showcased some behind-the-scenes stuff that went into Loki. And while it did answer some questions, it seems like maybe there's even more questions and speculation than ever before. Now, we already had a lot of questions when it came down to some sequences and scenes that we saw in official trailers for Loki that never actually made their way into any of the real episodes that aired on Disney+. Though, with Marvel officially launching Assembled, we now have a little bit of insight as to some of the things, sequences, plots, and other things that may have been intended for Loki that didn't quite make its way into the final release. And some of the stuff is incredibly interesting. So we want to go through and talk about some of the really unique things that have been caught by eagle-eyed viewers that you might not catch on the Assembled episode on Loki. For instance, one of the biggest things that came out of the show Loki was the final huge introduction of the brand new character who is going to be likely playing a role as the villain throughout multiple movies in the future. Jonathan Majors as He Who Remains, or Kang the Conqueror, will be playing some major role in the future of the MCU. But in Assembled, the making of Loki, there is some footage that have been caught that didn't actually make it into the episode where this character is featured. You can catch some of these dialogue lines around 55 minutes into the episode, but this character says lines like, "I try to explain what I'm capable of, but we don't have the million years it would take for you to understand." That was a really interesting line nonetheless to kind of elaborate on the depth and scope of this character, but it looks like there was also some other little quips along the way, which really help make this character an interesting and entertaining character also. Like this other line where he says to the two characters, Loki and Sylvie, "Guys, if I was going to do an exploding chair, why wouldn't I just do an exploding floor?" And then there was this quote, which was incredibly ominous and almost creepy in a very foreboding way as to the future. But he does say, "You think I'm just here with you? Oof, I am everywhere." This is just really cool. We do wish some of these lines made it in because it's so ominous and likely foreshadowing the massive scope that has just opened up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with this character, and what this could mean for the future is definitely going to be something incredibly interesting. We already know that Kang the Conqueror is set to appear in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but we might see even more things somewhere along the lines of the future as well. We also did get to see some concept art revealed for Loki, which was really cool because the set pieces in Loki were incredibly unique. The way that the TVA was built was already awesome in itself, but they took it a step further, revealing some things that have some pretty big plot lines that obviously got cut along the way, which some of them have implications even with series like Guardians of the Galaxy. For instance, in this concept art, this illustration of the waiting room, we see a ton of characters in jumpsuits in line waiting to be helped in the TVA. And if you look closely, you can see a standing two-legged raccoon, very much so resembling Rocket Raccoon, insinuating that maybe a variant of this character was intended to appear in this television series at one early point in development. They considered giving him a cameo appearance, or perhaps there was something more intended for this character or some sort of crossover with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Matter of fact, the line actually features what appears to seem like other Ravengers from both the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, while also in the same sort of TVA outfit like what we saw Loki in episode 1. And of course, Miss Minutes is there in the illustration as well. And of course, we know from Loki that there likely was plans for other cameo appearances along the way. For instance, besides just this concept art that shows the Ravengers and Rocket Raccoon, there were potentially other cameos that were filmed and considered. For instance, early on, it was revealed that there was a Chris Hemsworth cameo for this film where he would voice the character Throg, who is essentially the frog version of Thor in one timeline. We do see a very brief appearance of this in episode 5 of Loki, but it definitely wasn't some hugely fleshed out thing, but does make us wonder what other types of cameos could have been considered and cut along the way. Okay, there's a couple more things we'll jump into in just a second, but real quick, we want to give a huge shout out to our DC Thursday winner. If you guys didn't know, every single Thursday we ask a challenging DC related trivia question over on our community tab, so if you want a chance to have your comment featured, make sure you're subscribed and head over to our community tab on Thursdays and participate for a chance to have your comment featured right here in a video. Okay, let's get back into this. Now, the big question that comes out of this illustration of the waiting room, though, is as to whether or not Marvel has already made plans to have variants of Rocket Raccoon or some other characters show up down the road, and maybe that'll be something that could be explored in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 or Thor: Love and Thunder, but we really don't know yet. It's just interesting that this idea is being presented in the assembled episode. Now, another thing that we caught that was incredibly interesting is coming from this whiteboard alone, where we can actually see an interrogation tactic that was used by the Time Variance Authority that may have been planned at one point for the main plot for Loki, where they were going to fake give Loki all of the Infinity Stones and let him run rampant with it, just to find that he's actually, at the end of the day, powerless to the TVA's control, and as it would turn out, of course, none of it would actually end up being real. Now, this is interesting because we got to kind of put these pieces together from a whiteboard drawing where you can zoom in and see what is written on the whiteboard, and it would show a little bit about how this would all play out, but it would put Loki in a position to give more honest answers to Mobius. This would also play into the role of free will, which was explored in the show already, but obviously they went a different route where, at the end of the day, it seems like for the most part, using the time loop with Lady Sif instead still to an extent does the same goal that this original plan was, but it is interesting to see how this plotline and storyline evolved over time, and probably tying it together with Loki seeing the entire history of his own character probably played a big role in getting his character from point A to point B without necessarily having to rely on this original part for the TV series. Now, going into season 2, it is very clear that a lot of these characters are going to have arcs and storylines that will be continued through and through later on. And we've seen the character Loki in the MCU and then also in the TV show Loki go through various evolutions over time. And we've seen various forms of Loki as to where he is in his own personal journey. And a lot of this could also be applied for the character Sylvie, and we learned a bit from Loki director Kate Herron, who actually said that Sylvie is sort of where our Loki was in Thor, talking about the first Thor movie. She's driven by revenge, pain, and anger. Now, it's been a long time since that first Thor movie came out, but if you remember, Loki was dealing with a ton of things, realizing that he was kidnapped at birth and was dealing with his own self-identity crisis while also being driven by revenge, pain, and anger as well. Now, we've seen that version of Loki evolve all the way through his redemption arc in Avengers Infinity War, and to an extent we see the version of Loki that we're watching in the Loki TV series go through a simplified version of a similar arc, putting these two versions of Loki, with Loki from the show and Sylvie, in different trajectories, but still ultimately coming from a same point of interest, which is something that likely will be explored heavily in season 2, which of course is confirmed, though when we'll actually see season 2 is definitely still up for question, but we are interested to see whenever this does end up coming out. Now, in the assembled episode, we did also see some other unique concept arts with some things that were a little bit different along the way. For instance, the Citadel from the last episode actually had a slightly different appearance in a lot of the early concept arts before the set was actually built before filming, and it's cool to see things like the windows looking quite different, or just the color palette that was originally going to be used being different as well, but still the idea of this dark and also ethereal and significant platform was still utilized in the final version. Now, looking at the greater scope of the Loki TV series and things that we know are coming in the future of the MCU, it is also possible that Loki did open the door for some big story plots that have been existing in the background for a little while now. For instance, it has been speculated that we are going to see a Young Avengers series sometime in the future, and since we've seen characters already like Wiccan and Speed from WandaVision, Eli Bradley from the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and other characters along the way that possibly could be involved like Cassie Lang, some fans have gone as far as to speculate that young Loki could be playing a role in the Young Avengers down the road, or also, since Kang is in fact already revealed in the MCU, in the comic book franchise, a young version of Kang does go back in time to try to change his fate and takes on the mantle of a character called the Iron Lad. So maybe ultimately there is some sort of tie-in to this Young Avengers plot or theme that's been kind of built up for a little bit of time. So we wanted to ask you guys, what do you guys think about all of this? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on for more videos like this uploaded every day of the week. That's it for today though. We'll see you all next time with a brand new video.